John Zogby standing by right now from Zogby Analytics. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Bill. Hi.
Interesting couple days we have had.
Wow, yes.
I want to play a little audio, and what I have done, John, is the president's initial audio where he basically said, I don't see why it would be Russia. And I watched that, listened to it over and over again. I just can't see where his walk back yesterday using the word wouldn't. He's saying, when I read the transcript, I realized miraculously that I should have said wouldn't and I said would. So I thought, what if we are to insert the words from yesterday into the Putin press conference? So listen to, and I think it flows perfectly. I completely now believe him. Listen to this.
People came to me, Dan Coates came to me, and some others. They said they think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. So I have great confidence in my...
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. Here's another...
What do you need me on for this morning?
It's a good point. Here's another version.
Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be Russia. So I have great confidence in my...
All right, John, take it away.
The president is not really making an effort at all to grow into this job. He is not prepared to be president of the United States under normal circumstances and normal preparation. I mean, this is the guy who knows how to campaign, knows how to appeal to base instincts, and frankly, knows how to win. But there comes certain basic responsibilities that go with the job, paying attention to details of administration, handling diplomacy, the art of dealing with other people. And the president really has shown very little capacity, very little interest, very little desire in doing those sorts of things that a traditional president would and should do.
I kind of wonder, I'm reading through some of the stories where Hannity, the interview with the president the other night, huge ratings. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you've got people on both sides can't wait to see what the president and how the president's going to react to this. Majority of the poll, New York Post has a poll, generally conservative. Majority of Americans disagree with the president on this. Trump, I'll get into his ad lib in a second, which is where I think he gets in trouble. But my question, though, is Democrats are out now saying this is treason, impeachment, et cetera, et cetera. Do Democrats continuously shoot themselves in the foot when they seem to overreach, or do you feel they're not overreaching?
Oh, no, they are overreaching. It's really hard to see where this is an act of treason in any way. It's an act of incompetence or someone who isn't prepared to be president. Now, what's the backstory on all of this? Does Putin have a dossier on the president? Does he know more about him than he should? Is Trump really out simply for new hotels and new business deals? I don't know, and I don't know if we're ever really going to know. The bottom line is that Democrats, of course, are playing to their base, but that's not where the critical mass is in this country. These are not, I'm not a lawyer, but these are probably not impeachable offenses, and by raising that sort of ante, they throw the debate off into a direction that probably is only going to hurt them. Americans don't like their presidents to be impeached. They don't.
Yeah. And I want to talk two issues here quickly, and then we're going to bring in Don Bramer. Don is a political analyst. He worked was appointed under George Bush, a Navy veteran. It seems first the ad lib. When the president he cannot help himself, he doesn't want people, I believe, he doesn't want people to think he's really reading off a teleprompter or reading a statement. So he'll throw in an ad lib, like there was no collusion. That one he seemed to write on the script yesterday. Additionally, he talked about how, well, we had a wonderful meeting, and on the paperwork it talked about the fact that the Queen walked him through a review of the Royal Guard, and but then he does an ad lib and says, by the way, it was the first time the Queen has done this in 70 years. It was really special. It's the ad-libs that get him in trouble, because that's not true. The Queen does this several times a year.
Yes.
So he's created a storyline that didn't have to exist if he just stuck to the script.
No, and this is where, the pop psychologists and even the real ones suggest that there's some serious narcissism here. This is a guy who sees his own reality and creates his own reality and plays it out, and then assumes that everyone will play out that sense of himself that he has, when in reality that's not the case, at least for half of the American people. And it's certainly not the case for much of the American media, who he's really gone out of his way to alienate and embarrass.
As always, John, we appreciate it. These are interesting times. There's no doubt about that.
There is no question.
Yep, thanks so much, John Zogby.
Hey, thanks.
All right, from Zogby Analytics. And Don Bramer is a political analyst, former Navy veteran, current defense policy expert, and a former George Bush appointee. Don, you had a chance to listen to what John had to say. Where do you come in on this?
Well, there's a lot of what John says that I'll agree with. And, the president probably is a narcissist. But if you look at the past president, so was he.
Sure.
I think anyone that goes into that top sphere of political life has to be a little bit of a narcissist, or they wouldn't get where they are.
Or
that's the nature of the beast.
Or they're Jimmy Carter, and right,
give up the peanut farm,
and that just doesn't always work out all that well. So, how bad was this? Because Republicans, they're going to say only so much. There's a great deal of fear if you criticize this president, it's going to cost you in the primary. But how bad was it?
You'll get a bad tweet if you do.
You'll get a bad tweet and maybe a nickname. But how bad was this over the last 48 hours for his closest allies for the president?
Well, there's a lot of damage control still going on. I think him being a narcissist, as we say, and him being very confident, the fact that he was able to come back and correct himself actually says a lot. If you look at where he was a year ago to where he is today, he's certainly more confident now than he was then. So I think for him to do that, it said a lot. He made a gaffe. He misspoke. Let's just take it to that and move forward. Who hasn't? I mean, President Obama bowed before the Saudi king. George W. Bush, or H.W. Bush, he got sick in front of the Tokyo prime minister.
Right.
They're all going to mess up, and Lord knows how many gaffes Joe Biden's made.
He certainly has made a lot. Don't you feel, though, that this one just had such horrible optics with our chief rival here, with the former Soviet Vladimir Putin? This one seemed, you had some people calling this treasonous, and maybe that's an overreach, as John Zogby said.
Well, it's a great overreach, but if you're a Democrat, it's a great fundraising tool.
Yeah.
If you look at the two personalities, you have a real estate person, a businessman. The art of the deal versus the art of intelligence and interrogation, which you have in Vladimir Putin, are completely different. So you have a trained person who can stay calm, collect, and then the president, as everyone knows, he likes to go off script, and that's where he gets in trouble.
Yeah.
It happens with all of them. Yeah. They're so used to prepared statements and speeches that in that case, when they go off, it usually bites them.
Yeah, Andrew.
So there was the statement that he made, which was a scripted statement, and he talked about he would rather make and I'm summarizing here because I can't remember the exact quote, but he would rather
this is during the
press conference. Yeah. He would rather make a political risk for peace as opposed to making a peace risk for politics. Is there something that could have gone on or been discussed during the meeting that would have led him to maybe be a little bit more easier on Putin in public?
Absolutely.
Some sort of arrangement.
You look at, I think that's what they did in that summit is no different than what President Bush did. There was a very short or a very long private meeting that President Bush had with Putin, and then they had the public meeting. Same thing happened here. The only ones that will ever know what went on are the two translators and the two leaders. I'm sure something was said. it was probably a lot more aggressive and a lot more straightforward in that meeting than it was in public.
However, and to be fair, you cannot excuse away the comments he made against our country and against the FBI and the CIA, against his own advisors on a world stage standing next to Vladimir Putin. That is not, you can't excuse that away. You can't say he did, the reason he did that is because he was tough in the meeting. There's just no excuse for that, Don. Do you agree?
I completely agree. If you've got doubts about your own forces, it's kind of like we learned growing up. Those are the things you say to your people in private. You don't say those in public. Not
on a world stage. But no. Let's be fair here. And you brought this up earlier, Don. How hard was that? Because I got to tell you, it looked uncomfortable. And we've all made statements, and you've had to go back and apologize or go back and restate. And for us to all sit there and say, yeah, I think he should have. I think he meant to say wouldn't, and he said would. It's not believable. That had to be the most difficult thing in the world for President Trump to do. And your take on that is that this is growth in the last year, 2 years.
I wouldn't call it growth. I would just say that it is a pattern for him. I mean, even if you look at the interview with Tucker Carlson, one of the first things he said is, here's a guy who, when he first came to D.C., he was confident that he was Donald Trump, but he was very much concerned about what people thought about him before he made his decisions. Now he's at a state where he firmly believes he's doing the right thing, and whether the polls like it or not, he thinks he has the best interest of the country at heart, and so his confidence is a little higher. So I think in that case, when his advisors came to him and say, hey, you've got to do this, you've got to do some damage control, I bet that first meeting when they brought that up probably wasn't very pleasant for everyone around him. Yeah. And it's surprisingly that somebody didn't get fired.
Yeah. Hey, we've had some weird presidents over the last 200-plus years, and we find out usually after they've left office. The problem here is so much of this, maybe it's the media, maybe it's the fact that we have instant 24-hour media. Every time every minute of the day there's more commentary and opinion, or maybe it's this president who just wears it on his sleeve. He's not the first. When we look back at presidents, there's a lot of oddity out there, and we're just seeing it right here in the forefront.
I believe that you're right. We've gone through centuries where it would take days for a letter to get there, or a statement or a communique, and now half the time it's on social media before the press can even get it to us.
Yeah.
And then, the world of civilian journalists jump to conclusions and make, how can I get a tweet, a GIF, whatever you need to do. And especially to the other side, they're going to attack him no matter what they want to do because they've got elections coming up and they need to raise money.
Sure. Although I got to say, when you attack him on everything, vehemently, loudly, screaming to the highest rooftops,
this is the worst.
When something comes up that's really bad, people are like, it's just this is all part of this is politics.
No, this is the worst.
Yeah, it's crazy. All right.
Well, as far as I can tell, the world's ended at least 3 times in the last week.
I think it has. Don Bramer, we really appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you.
All right, have a great day.